Mr. Cole.
Your son has 9 days left.
The doctor's words struck like thunder. Mr. Cole, your son has 9 days left. Ethan froze. His phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the cold hospital floor. 9 days. That's all. For 6 beautiful years, Caleb had been his heartbeat, his reason to breathe. Now even the millions in his account couldn't buy him more time. In the hallway stood Naomi Brooks, the family's maid who had cared for Caleb since he was born. Her hands trembled as she whispered a quiet prayer. She had seen sickness before. And she wasn't about to lose another child she loved. That night, Ethan walked into Caleb's room and found Naomi humming softly beside his bed, the same lullaby she used to sing when his mother died. Caleb smiled in his sleep. Ethan's throat tightened. Before he could speak, Naomi looked up and said, "Sir, there's something I need to do. Please, don't stop me." And that's where her story truly began. Before we dive deeper, if you're listening right now, I want to prove my mom wrong. She said I can't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter. Subscribe to King's Folklore, and let's keep breathing life into tales that refuse to die. Now, let's continue. Ethan Cole hadn't slept in 2 nights. The sound of the heart monitor beside his son's hospital bed had become the rhythm of his pain. Beep. Pause. Beep. Each sound reminded him that time was running out. Caleb's little fingers barely moved as Ethan held his hand. The boy's skin was warm, fragile like a candle about to fade. Doctors had done everything money could buy. Private specialists, experimental drugs, flights to 3 different cities, nothing changed the truth. Caleb had an aggressive cancer that even the world's best couldn't stop. 9 days left. That's all they said. Naomi Brooks moved silently through the room. She had been with the family since Caleb was born, more like an aunt than a maid. She changed his blankets, sang when he whimpered, prayed when Ethan's voice failed. She didn't look like much. Simple clothes, hair tied back, eyes that carried both kindness and pain, but there was something unbreakable about her. Ethan noticed how Caleb always smiled when Naomi entered. Even in pain, the boy tried to lift his tiny hand to reach her. She'd lean close, whisper something soft, and he'd fall asleep again. One night, Ethan found her still awake at 3 a.m., sitting beside the hospital bed, whispering through tears. "He'll make it," she murmured. "I don't know how, but he will." Ethan sighed, rubbing his tired face. "Naomi, you've done enough. Go home and rest." She looked at him, eyes full of quiet fire. "Sir, I made a promise to him. I'm not leaving." For the first time, Ethan didn't argue. He was too tired, too lost. The days crawled by. Nurses changed shifts, doctors shook their heads, and visitors stopped coming. But Naomi stayed. She began reading Caleb's stories about angels and miracles. Sometimes Ethan would listen from the hallway, pretending to check emails just to hear his son laugh, a small, broken laugh that still filled the air with hope. By the 5th day, Caleb's breathing had grown shallow. His body looked weak, but his eyes were calm. Ethan stood by his bed, whispering, "Buddy, I'd give anything to trade places with you." Naomi stood behind him, holding back tears. She thought of her own sister gone at just 12 years old. No one had fought for her the way she wished they had. Maybe that's why she couldn't walk away now. That night, Naomi went to the hospital chapel. She knelt, her hands shaking. "God," she whispered, "if there's a way, use me. Just don't take that boy." The next morning, she made a call. To a friend, a nurse she once knew abroad. She asked about special transplants, alternative procedures, anything. Hours later, she received a message back. "There's one clinic in Mexico. They'll consider it, but only if there's a matching donor." Her heart pounded. Could it be possible? She secretly arranged for testing, not telling Ethan. She wanted to be sure first. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. Naomi opened it with trembling hands. Perfect match. Her knees buckled. She laughed and cried at the same time. She didn't know whether to shout or pray. That evening, Ethan came to check on Caleb and noticed Naomi unusually quiet. "Is something wrong?" he asked. She shook her head quickly. No, sir. I just believe we're closer to a miracle than you think. He smiled sadly. Miracles don't happen for people like me, Naomi. She looked straight at him. Maybe they happen because of people like you if you're willing to believe again. Ethan walked away, unsure what she meant. But Naomi knew her time was short. Caleb had 4 days left. She had to act fast. That night, she stood by Caleb's bedside, brushing his hair gently. Would you like to go on a little trip? She whispered. Caleb smiled weakly. With you and Dad? She paused. Just with me. For now. Tears welled in her eyes. She kissed his forehead and turned off the light. For the first time in a long time, she had hope, but it came with a plan she could never explain. The countdown had begun. Naomi Brooks didn't sleep that night. She watched the city lights flicker outside the hospital window and counted the hours Caleb had left. 4 days. Maybe less. She knew what she had to do, but it was madness. No father would ever let his maid take his only child across borders for a surgery no one could guarantee. Still, every time she looked at Caleb's sleeping face, she heard her own promise. Use me. By dawn, she had made the calls, packed a small bag, and arranged a quiet transport. The private nurse she once knew sent her a message. Come quickly. The surgeon is ready. The hardest part came next. Facing Ethan. He was asleep in the waiting chair, suit wrinkled, face buried in exhaustion. She stood over him for a long moment, whispering, I'm sorry, sir, but I can't let him die while I can still fight. With one deep breath, Naomi lifted Caleb gently into his wheelchair. The boy stirred, smiling faintly. Naomi, where are we going? Somewhere you can get better, sweetheart. The hospital corridors were silent, just the soft hum of fluorescent lights and distant footsteps. She signed a few papers with trembling hands, knowing it could cost her everything. Within hours they were on a plane. Caleb leaned against her shoulder as clouds floated beneath them. Does Dad know? He whispered. Naomi hesitated. Not yet, but he will. She smiled weakly. He'll be proud when you wake up strong again. Back in the city, Ethan awoke to chaos. Nurses were shouting, doctors flipping through charts his son was gone. His heart nearly stopped. He checked the cameras. He saw Naomi, carrying his boy. The betrayal hit like a knife. He couldn't breathe. She took him? Within an hour, his private jet was fueling up. He called his lawyer, called security, but in between the anger and panic, something else crept in. Fear. Not for himself, not for his reputation, but for the only 2 people who had ever given him hope. Meanwhile, Naomi landed in Mexico exhausted but determined. The small clinic stood on the edge of a dusty road, surrounded by palm trees and prayers. The doctors knew who she was, the donor. They didn't ask for money. They saw the desperation in her eyes. Tests confirmed what she already knew. She was a perfect match. But the surgeon frowned. Miss Brooks, do you understand? You could lose your life. Naomi nodded. If it saves his, it's worth it. As they prepared the operating room, she sat beside Caleb, brushing his hair. The boy looked up with weak eyes. Are you scared? She smiled through tears. A little. But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is be scared. And do it anyway. Outside, the sky turned golden. The surgery was set for the next morning. Back home, Ethan's jet cut through the night sky. His mind raced through every worst possibility. When he finally arrived, he stormed through the clinic doors shouting, Where is my son? The doctors froze. One nurse pointed toward the operating room. Through the small window, Ethan saw them both, Caleb and Naomi, on 2 separate tables. The realization hit him like a wave. Naomi wasn't kidnapping his son. She was saving him. Stop the surgery, he yelled. But no one listened. The anesthetic was already in. The machines were already humming. He fell to his knees. Tears blurred his vision as he pressed his hand to the glass. Naomi, why didn't you tell me? The nurse beside him whispered. She said you'd never allow it. She said she'd rather beg God than ask permission. For hours, Ethan waited outside, every minute feeling like an eternity. He thought about all the times he'd looked at Naomi as just a maid, someone beneath his world of luxury and pride. But now, she was giving him something he couldn't buy. Another chance to be a father. Finally, the doors opened. The surgeon removed his mask, eyes tired but smiling. "Mr. Cole, both are alive." Ethan couldn't speak. His chest tightened, tears spilling as he whispered, "Thank you." He rushed into the room. Caleb was still asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Beside him lay Naomi, pale and weak, her arm bandaged where they'd taken the marrow. Ethan knelt beside her bed. "Naomi, you saved him." Her lips parted faintly. "No, sir. We saved him. You never stopped believing, even when you said you didn't." He held her hand, for the first time not as her employer but as family. Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, painting the room in gold. For the first time in days, Ethan felt peace. The impossible had happened. The 9 days were over, and both hearts were still beating. 3 weeks passed. The world outside moved on. But inside that quiet clinic, time seemed to pause every heartbeat, a miracle in motion. Ethan Cole sat between two beds every day, his son on one side, Naomi on the other. He'd read to Caleb, then turn and whisper prayers over Naomi, the woman who had rewritten his idea of love and loyalty. Caleb's color had returned. His laughter filled the hallway again. Nurses smiled whenever they heard it, a sound they thought they'd never hear again. But Naomi's recovery was slower. Her body had endured too much. Some nights, Ethan feared she wouldn't wake up. Yet every morning, he'd find her still fighting eyes, fluttering open, with a faint smile. "Is he okay?" she'd always ask. And Ethan would answer softly, "He's perfect, Naomi. Because of you." Word of what happened spread faster than Ethan expected. Within days, media outlets across the globe picked up the story. Housemaid risks life to save billionaire's son. Reporters flooded the clinic, but Naomi refused interviews. "I didn't do it for attention," she said quietly. "I did it because love doesn't check pay slips or titles." Ethan tried to shield her from the cameras, but deep down, he knew her story was bigger than all of them. It wasn't just about his wealth or her courage. It was about what happens when faith meets action. Months later, they returned home. The Cole mansion felt different, lighter, alive. Caleb's toys filled the living room again, and Naomi's laughter echoed through the halls. Ethan had rebuilt an entire wing of the house not as a gesture of charity, but as a promise. A small plaque by the door read, "The Naomi Brooks Children's Health Foundation, inspired by a love that saved us all." One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Ethan found Naomi sitting on the balcony, her hair moving gently in the breeze. "You should have let me thank you properly," he said. She smiled faintly. "You already did by believing again." He handed her a small box. Inside was a necklace, simple, gold, shaped like a heart. On it, a single word engraved, "Family." Naomi blinked away tears. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Ethan said softly. "Because you didn't just save Caleb, you saved me too." Downstairs, Caleb ran through the garden, laughter chasing the evening air. The world had almost taken him, but grace had said otherwise. A year later, on his 7th birthday, Caleb blew out his candles, surrounded by laughter, warmth, and love. The cameras rolled, not for fame, but for memory. The same song Naomi once hummed in pain now played in joy. And as the lights dimmed, Ethan whispered, "Miracles don't come from money, they come from people who still believe when the rest of us give up." The screen fades to black. Soft piano plays. The words appear, "Love is not blood, it's sacrifice." And a seat. Moral of the story. Sometimes, the richest people aren't the ones with money, they're the ones with the courage to give everything for someone else. Naomi Brooks taught that love isn't about where you're born, what you own, or who signs your paycheck. It's about what you're willing to lose, so another heart can live. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button for more emotional tales from King's Folklore. And even if it didn't, come on, subscribe anyway, we'll win you over next time. Drop a comment, like the video, and let's keep the stories alive. Thanks for watching.